Chubby Meeple back in kind of the common surroundings now. Wanted to do recaps of more Origins days, things that I did there. This video is a recap of day 2 or Thursday at Origins. You know, what I did, what I saw, who I met with, those kinds of things. So we're going to dive right in, and through the course I'll hold up a couple of the games that I acquired that day. But we're going to dive in. One of the first things that I did that day on day 2, this was Thursday, when I got to the exhibit hall. Exhibit hall opened that morning at 10 a.m. for the first time. So first thing I did was make a beeline for Renegade Game Studios. Had some things that I was picking up from them, and was lucky enough to get my hands on 4 titles, 2 of which haven't released quite yet, one of which I believe is sold out at the distribution level. Actually, back 3 of which are not released yet, and the 4th is sold out at the distribution level. So if you haven't pre-ordered it from your local game store, you might want to do that, or give them a call, see if they can grab a copy for you. It is sold out at distribution level, but we'll take a look at that. First game I want to show, got a hold of Fox in the Forest. This is a 2-player trick-taking game. I wasn't sure how a 2-player trick-taking game would work, because to me, if you're playing a trick-taking game with 2 people, it's war. But there are some unique mechanics and some twists, some scoring that keeps it from being that. There's also some special abilities on some of the cards as well. Not going to dive too much into this game as well as some of the others, because I will be doing some full reviews on the majority of these, whether they're video reviews or some write-ups. But so keep an eye out for my review on Fox in the Forest. But that's one game I grabbed from Renegade. One of them that's not quite out yet. Another game I got my hands on is Sentient. This is a dice rolling game, a little more puzzly than I expected it to be, but rolling some dice, trying to complete some objectives on cards to score points, playing through a series of rounds, getting some bonus points at the end game. We'll obviously have a review of this one coming out as well. This one hits stores in July, so keep your eyes out for Sentient. I also got my hands on another coming in July release, and this is Flip Ships, a little bit of a dexterity game. You have enemy spaceships that are coming down the table at you, and you have your own little cardboard spaceships. You're kind of flicking them out there and trying to get them to land on the enemy ships and shoot them out of the sky. And then there's a mothership that's a little 3-dimensional. You got to flip your ships into the mothership so many times in order to get that. But what's really cool about this, as I'm sure you've seen before, you've got flip ships, and if I flip it, Flip Ships. Very cool. Cool graphic design there. Again, this is Kane Klinko, so keep your eyes out for a review coming of Flip Ships here in the future. We'll have that coming out again. This is another July release for Renegade. I was lucky to get my hands on at Origins. And then the 4th and final Renegade game that I got my hands on, and this is the one that is sold out at the distribution level. So if you didn't pre-order it, you might want to get to your local game store, see if they still have a copy on their shelves. And this game is Flatline. This is a real-time co-op dice-chucking game set in the Fuse universe, where you're working in a medical bay of a spaceship. This is obviously also designed by Kane Klinko, published by Renegade. Very cool little dice chucker. I'll be doing a full review of this one as well in the coming days, weeks, months. Probably not months, since it's already on the store shelves. But I'll be doing a little bit of a review of Flatline from Kane Klinko and Renegade. Once I got done with Renegade, I met up with the folks at Blue Orange Games, and my primary objective with getting to Blue Orange Games was to pick up a copy of King Domino. Obviously, your Spiel des Jahres nominee this year. Of the 3 nominees, this is probably my pick, because it's such a fun, lightweight game. Bruno Catala, Cyril Bouquet designed. I probably butchered Cyril's name. I apologize for that. Very cool little family weight game, easy to play with kids. I played a lot of this past weekend here with my kids. They absolutely loved this game, kept asking if we could play another game. Can we get another game? We have time for another one. So played a lot of this with them. But it's a fun family weight game. It's easy to teach. It plays really quick. In about 15 minutes, I would say, you're done with a game, and can just reshuffle the little tiles and do it all over again. So I'll be doing a review of this one, absolutely, because I love this game, and we'll be doing a review of this. So keep your eyes out. I'm sure you're all familiar with King Domino, but if not, I'll be doing a review just in case you're not. from there, I headed over, kind of made my way around the exhibit hall a little bit on Thursday and just kind of grabbed some copies of games and wanted to chat with a couple folks as well. I stopped by the IDW booth and chatted with Ross Thompson, who is their new marketing manager. He had actually just literally started the marketing manager position with IDW the Monday before Origins. So here I was talking to him on Thursday, essentially 3 days into the job. Chatted with him a lot. There are a lot of exciting things coming down the way from IDW Games. I would highly recommend keeping your eye out for news. One of the things that's been announced is the Atari line of games that are going to be kind of that retro fit. They're making board games out of the old Atari video games. The first 3 that have been announced are Centipede, Missile Command, and not Asteroids. There's another one. Centipede, Missile Command. Maybe it is Asteroids. Yes. So Centipede, Missile Command, and Asteroids are the 3 games that are coming out from IDW. Definitely keep your eyes out for those. There's also some IPs that they've secured. They're going to be making some really cool games on as well. I just recently saw an announcement that they are going to be doing the Legend of Korra board game centered around Legend of Korra, so that could be really cool when that comes out. But I chatted with Ross. Like I said, he just started the marketing manager position at IDW, but he's been in the industry for 8+ years now, so he's certainly not a new guy in the field. So he was able to get added onto IDW's review copy list, so hopefully I'll be able to see some review copies from them coming soon, so I can get some reviews out and help IDW out. So that was what I did there. From there, one of the highlights of day 2 of Origins, or Thursday of Origins, was I sat down in the back of the main gaming hall with Isaac Childress, designer of Gloomhaven, back here. Sat down with Isaac and got to play a prototype of Founders of Gloomhaven that'll be coming to Kickstarter soon. According to Isaac, it was about a month, maybe a month and a half away from hitting Kickstarter, since he did decide to do that as a separate campaign from the second printing of Gloomhaven. Sat down and played that with him. Very much not even remotely plays like Gloomhaven. So if you enjoy Gloomhaven and the card play and the fighting and all of that, you want to look into Founders of Gloomhaven because it's set in that universe, but I would highly encourage you to take a look at the gameplay and the way it plays. Don't be expecting another dungeon crawl, because it's not. This is very much a Euro game. Players are actually building the city of Gloomhaven literally from scratch. So you're setting up roads so that you can trade various resources. You're combining 4 basic resources to create 4 additional kind of advanced resources. And then those resources, those 8 resources, all get combined in different ways to produce goods that get delivered. And one of the unique things about the game was that if I owned a resource and I had an opponent, that you had to use my resource, because like I said, there's 8 resources in the game, 4 regular, 4 advanced, or 4 basic and 4 advanced resources. And once someone owns one of those resources, they are the owner for the game. You can buy control, or not control, but you can buy access to that resource. But anytime you use that resource to gain victory points by delivering something, then, let's say you delivered a good to one of the buildings in the game that scored you 9 victory points, but you used 2 resources owned by other people, you would have to give victory points to those people. So if I had delivered something that scored 8 points, but I used someone who, I used a resource that someone else owned, I would actually only get 7 victory points, and the person whose resource I used would get the 8th point. So a little bit of a unique mechanic in that the points get divvied up based on who's using what resources and who owns them. So definitely a game that, from the get-go of the game, you want to start getting those resources out as quickly as you can and own as many of those resources as you can, so you can kind of pick your way through some points. There is some in-game scoring. There's a little bit of a worker placement mechanic in there, and you do have unique factions that are in there. They're factions that are right out of the world of Gloomhaven that you play as, that are building up this city, and each one has their own special ability that you can activate as well. So I had a blast playing it. It was great to sit down with Isaac, have Isaac teach the game, be able to ask questions. He asked questions of us as far as what we liked, what we didn't like. There's very much a follow mechanic. You have a hand of cards, you're playing cards to take your actions, whether it's a trade action or you're recruiting other workers for you. And then people can follow, take the follow action by playing cards out as well. So it was a very fun game. We had a great time, all in with teaching and gameplay, playing through to the end. It was about a 3-hour game. game. Now again, it was a teaching game, learning game. There were a lot of stops, a lot of questions in there. So I would say probably when this all gets tightened up, you're probably looking at about a 90 to 120 minute Euro though. Very good, medium to heavyweight. It was a lot of fun. So definitely keep your eyes out for Founders of Gloomhaven from Isaac Childress. From there, went around the corner to some other tables, met up with some other game designers, and played a prototype out there. This is a prototype. It's an unnamed prototype that we played, and the whole game was about each player took on the role of a Japanese spirit, a different Japanese spirit that was haunting this little Japanese village over the course of 3 years. It was a very unique rotating board. Each spirit or each spirit that you played as, each one had its own unique power. I specifically played as a spirit that had the ability to haunt villagers. After you played your season out and everybody took their actions, you did some area majority in each of the seasons of the unique board. The board's unique because it's divided into 4 quarters that each represent a season of the year, and you rotate the board around, so you will play, you'll take a turn in winter, and that board will rotate. Your next turn you're playing in the spring, and then it rotates, you're playing in the summer. So it was a very cool mechanic there. And then once you got through to the end of the year, you would do some area control over where you had placed some of your spirits or some of your shrines within, or your kami tokens, where they were placed within the village. There was some area control, and whoever had control got first pick of villagers, and those villagers gave you some abilities that you got when you claimed, and they were good for in-game scoring. The character I played as had the ability to haunt these villagers prior to them being claimed, and what that meant was when they were claimed, I got to take the claim bonus too, even if I wasn't the one claiming them. So it was a very cool, unique power. Played through 3 years of game time, and then whoever had the most points won. It's a very fun little game. I actually sat down and played that with some other well-known names in the industry. I played with John Gilmore of Dead of Winter, Wasteland Express Delivery Service, Dinosaur Island fame, Christopher Chung, who of course the designer behind Lanterns, probably one of my favorite games out there. Very easy to teach, very easy to play. But Christopher Chung played with us. Ian Moss, who designed News at 11, was there at the table with us, and then Travis Chance was with us as well. He or prior to Origins, had announced that he had left Indie Boards and Cards and was starting his own venture, company called Colossal Games. And the prototype we were playing was actually a prototype that he's considering publishing under the new label, Colossal Games. So he was play testing it with a bunch of us, getting some feedback, what works, what doesn't work, what may need to be tweaked a little bit there. So it was a very cool experience to get to see a little bit of game design from the other side. I mean, I've play tested some things before, but certainly not with the caliber of names that I sat around the table with there. During that playtest, unfortunately, I had a great time with the game, but unfortunately, I had to leave after I'd played 2 of the 3 years. I had to leave because I had an invitation to invite-only press event that North Star Games was running. This was across the street from Origins at Barley's, which is the brew house. If you watched my day 1 video, you saw I was at Barley's for dinner and had grabbed my exclusive pint glass. But I went back over to Barley's, and down in the basement of Barley's, they have something down there called the Underground, which is kind of like a speakeasy feel that they have, and it's open, pretty much year-round down there. But North Star was running an event, and it was an invitation-only event, and the way they did it was they sent poker chips, little poker chips, that literally one side of the chip just said, "Bring this chip to the Underground," had the address at, that Thursday night at 7 p.m., and then on the other side, it just said North Star Games. That's all it was. I think it may have said Barley's Brew Pub as well on the back. So it didn't have any information as to what the event was. And what it turned out to be was an announcement, a new game announcement coming out from North Star Games. North Star publishes probably the biggest game everyone knows them for is Evolution, or the Evolution series of games. So Evolution, Evolution Flight, Evolution Climate, Evolution the Beginning. They're also known for a lot of their party games, one being Wits and Wagers, which, Wits and Wagers, if you're not familiar with it, is very much a trivia game, but you're not meant to know the answers to these trivia questions. You're supposed to, the object is to be the person who guesses closest to the number without going over. All of the answers are numerical, so they may be percentages, or they may be, a number, and maybe how many miles long is this thing? If you stacked something end on end, how tall would it be in feet? So things you're not going to know off the top of your head, so you're just kind of guessing and ballparking it as best as you possibly can. And what they were doing, what North Star was announcing, is coming to Kickstarter the Saturday of Gen Con. They're going to launch a Kickstarter for a new edition of Wits and Wagers, and this is going to be Wits and Wagers Vegas. And it was really cool because when we walked into the room, they had everybody, the people from North Star were all dressed up in like the blackjack dealer outfits. They had a couple of employees that were dressed up in kind of like the 1920s speakeasy, like flapper kind of dresses, which was kind of fun. But we sat down at the table and actually got to play a full 7-round game of Wits and Wagers Vegas. Bruce from North Star Games was our dealer, Bruce is a cool guy. Absolutely had a blast with Bruce. I ended up talking to him later in the week, and ran into him over at North Market while I was having lunch one day. Ended up having a pretty long conversation with him as well, and he's just a fun guy. But he was our dealer, and sitting at the table with me, it was all press, it was all media. So a lot of the people that were there were people that you would recognize from YouTube or podcasts or written reviews. But sitting at my table were some of the Secret Cabal guys. Jamie, Chris, and Steve from the Secret Cabal were there, along with their buddy Bender. And I was there, and then Nicole and Scott Brady from Som Reviews were also at the table with us, as well as Chris from Board Gamers Anonymous. So it was a nice little mixture of media personalities sitting around the table. We played a 7-round game of Wits and Wagers Vegas. And I can give a little bit of a sneak peek here. This is Wits and Wagers Vegas plays with Wits and Wagers Party Edition. So you had Wits and Wagers Party Edition. All the press, the media that came actually got a copy of a pretty much near final copy of Wits and Wagers Vegas. And they had copies of Wits and Wagers Party Edition, which is the edition you'll play Vegas with. And for those of us that didn't have it, they sent us home with a copy of the Party Edition of Wits and Wagers. But Wits and Wagers adds another sheet. This is the Elvis sheet. It's a little bit bigger than the other player mats because, as it was explained to me, Elvis is larger than life. So you get your another player sheet that's on there. And more importantly, and I'm not going to unroll this thing on here, and it's still wrapped in plastic, so you may get some glare from the paper. But essentially, what you're doing in Wits and Wagers Vegas is you're gambling. You're betting on who knows the answers to what questions. So you can see on here, this particular green strip, it works just like Wits and Wagers. You ask the question, whoever's acting as the dealer asks the questions. Would ask a question, everybody writes their answer down on the mat, the Elvis mat, and the other mats that are included. And then you place those face down, and then you have the ability to do a long shot bet, which is something unique to Vegas Edition, where you can basically say, you know what, before you even reveal the numbers, I think Dave over there on the other side of the table knows what's going on, and I'm going to bet 10-1 that Dave's answer is the closest to the right answer. So you can throw your chips down and bet on Dave without even knowing what his answer is, just because you think it's something he knows a lot about. Maybe it's a Star Trek question and Dave's a Trekkie. Who knows? So you throw those chips down there. Once everybody's had the opportunity to bid on the long shot, then they reveal the numbers, the guesses or the answers. They get arranged from lowest to highest, starting in the green area of the board and going all the way through to there's a green area, there's a red area, and there's a black section as well. What's cool about this, the way this plays, is that when you bet on the answers, you can bet on an individual answer because you'll see the numbers at that point. So you can say, okay, I bet this is the closest without going over. You can place as many of your chips there as you want. You can make an all red bet, meaning I want to bet on everything that is past this green line, this green median line that's in the middle. Or you can make a red bet, which is everything under it. Or you have the ability of betting on smaller. I think the correct answer is smaller than all of these, and you can make some money there. There's different payout levels, like just much like going to Vegas and playing roulette or craps or blackjack. So you've got different payouts of 2-1, 3-1, 4-1, 6-1, 10-1 there. And then of course once the answer gets revealed, the dealer pays out just like Vegas style, and you go through it. Play 7 questions. You play 7 rounds, each round being a single question. So it's not going to take very long to play. We had an absolute blast playing this. One of my favorite moments playing this with the people around the table with me. One of the questions we had was a Star Trek question, and it was they wanted to know how many crew members there were on the Enterprise Star Trek. And I was kind of racking my brain with it. And I was sitting next to Jamie of the Secret Cabal, and he leaned over and told me that I needed to bet 10-1 on his answer because he had the Enterprise field manual, or the field manual for the Enterprise, like basically the training manual. I was, okay, that's pretty cool. So I threw my chips on Jamie without even coming through. He was way off. His answer was way off. I lost a bunch of money on it, and I asked him. I looked over at it afterwards. I'm like, well, you said you had the manual, and his exact words to me were, "I never said I read it," and that cracked me up because the Secret Cabal guys are hilarious. It was very cool to meet them in person and see, just how much fun they were, in person, and they're just as funny as they are on the podcast. So that was a lot of fun there. Like I said, Wits and Wagers Vegas will be coming to Kickstarter in August, specifically the Saturday of Gen Con. So keep your eyes out for that, and if that interests you, jump on it. It was an absolute blast to play. After I got done with North Star Games, I took a walk up High Street and went to Short North Pint House so that I could hit up the Blue Peg, Pink Peg meetup. It had started at 7 o'clock the same time the North Star Games event had started, so I wasn't sure I was going to make it to the event, but I hadn't eaten dinner yet, so I thought I'll go to Short North, I'll have dinner, and then I'll hang out with the people from the Blue Peg, Pink Peg podcast. I did run into Rob there. He was sitting there talking with their buddy Bernard, and we were sitting there chatting a little bit. They had some games while I was eating dinner. They were actually behind me playing Happy Salmon on a table, which was kind of funny to watch and observe while I was eating my food and having a drink. And we had a good time. I didn't hang out too long there because I had an early morning the next day on Friday, so I didn't hang out too terribly long there. And I knew I was going to be out late anyway on Thursday night because starting at 10 o'clock that night on Thursday night was Nerd Night, which is a charity event that gets organized at a lot of these big conventions, these big cons, and it usually goes to benefit a local children's hospital. This particular Nerd Night was a charity. The funds were being raised for Nationwide Children's Hospital, which is a children's hospital right in Columbus. It was all local. They raised, I believe, right around $900 over the course of the evening, but it was straight donation. You can make donations that were there. They had people representing the hospital that were there talking about all the stuff that they do with the money and talking about some of the kids that need help, some of the kids they had there. It was a really cool event. A lot of games being played. There was a gigantic raffle. When you walked in, they gave you a raffle ticket. They were calling out raffle numbers pretty much all night throughout the evening. And then as it got to the end of the evening, they started just, hey, who can do this first, and would win tickets, because people started filtering out a lot of the raffle tickets people had left as numbers were being called. So then it became, hey, the first person to jump up and shout this wins this game. So they gave away a bunch of games. I actually came home with a copy of We Come in Peace from Rather Dashing Games. I have no idea what this game is. I've heard of it. I've never sat and played it. I'm looking forward to cracking it open and seeing how it plays, how it works. And depending on how that goes, I may throw together a review and throw it up on here on the channel as well. But that was a raffle prize that I picked up and won during Nerd Night. The highlight of Nerd Night for me, though, was playing the new party game from Cosmos called Word Slam. This was a game I wasn't expecting. I hadn't really heard anything about, but in the middle of the room, there was just a big group of people that were just shouting random words, and I walked over to see what was going on, and what we had going on was Word Slam. Essentially, if you've not heard of Word Slam, it's a party game where each team you basically have two clue givers that are sitting facing each other, and their team of guessers, if you will, stood behind them. The clue givers could not talk. They couldn't gesture. All they could really do were point at cards. But they had a stand, two different stands on them. And they would obviously face them. And there was a series of cards all over the table, just spread all over the table. Some of them were verbs, there were nouns, there were prepositions like above and below and not, and things like that. So, but the object of the game, or what happens with the game, is, the two people who are giving the clues know what the word. They grab a card. One person picks a number, they roll a die, a d6 to find out, the number 1 through 6. They look at the card, so it's number 3. This clue giver would look at the card, he'd pass it across to the other clue giver, that clue giver would look at the card, they'd both look at number 3, they both knew what the word was. When they were ready to start, one guy would say word, the second guy would say slam, and they would immediately start grabbing the cards in the table and setting them up on the stands in front of them so that the team standing behind them could see the clues that were being given. And strictly from the words that were being put up on the stand, you were supposed to be able to, the clue givers are trying to guide their team to this word or this phrase before the other team got it. And so, like I said, they can't talk, they can't say yes, that's right, no, hey, longer word, nothing like that. They couldn't gesture. All they could really do was point at the cards that were up. They could take cards down, put cards back up. They could move cards around. So you could move a little bit of the cards around to like show some movement between things and how things were relating, or maybe sometimes words were together, sometimes this one was up, sometimes this. So it was a lot of moving around, but it was a lot of fun. We played a lot of that. There were a lot of the personalities from Board Game Geek were there. Lincoln, Scott, Eric Martin were over there. We had a bunch of game designers that would come in and out and play. I know Emerson Matsauchi was there at one point. I'm trying to think. I mean, there were so many people that were coming in and out of there. Eduardo Baraf was there. We had Jeremy and David of Man vs. Meeple came over and played a couple of rounds, as well as Gary and Ryan that are on their show sometimes, popping over and playing. It was a lot of fun. A lot of the group that was there, we had like Angelus Morningstar, I want to say his last name is. He was there hanging out with us. There was a whole ton of personalities, media personalities, game designers, game publishers that were hanging out playing Word Slam, and it literally was in the middle of the room. And it was kind of funny because as they were announcing raffle tickets, a lot of the people that were playing Word Slam didn't really pay attention to the raffle ticket numbers that were being rattled off because we were so engaged in the game. So I would highly recommend, if you're into party games, if you've got a group that loves playing things like code names or anything along those lines. I mean, this was very much, it was described as code names on steroids. Very fun, kind of everyone's just kind of shouting random words, and you have to be careful because if you're on a team, you don't want to be reading your clues out loud because the other team could hear you reading those words, and those words may not be clues that their clue giver is giving them, so you're just giving them extra clues. And so there were times where we had no idea what the word was, and so we just started yelling out random words to kind of confuse the team on the other side a little bit until we had a little bit better of a grasp. So definitely check out Word Slam if you're into party games, because that was a lot of fun there. And after Nerd Night, I went back to the hotel, went to bed because I had some stuff to do on Friday, and that was Origins Day number 2. Real quick before I sign off, had put up, in order to get myself to Origins, I needed a little bit of funding help to help pay for food, hotel costs, transportation to and from the hotel, whether that was going Uber or whether I was paying for parking that were there. And some very generous people stepped up. I started launching a GoFundMe campaign to try to raise a few $100s to help pay for food and things that were there. And a few individuals stepped up over the course of the campaign and helped out. And I want to talk about 2 of those individuals here at the end of this video. Part of the campaign, I promised to do shout outs. I didn't do any shout outs on day 0 and day 1, mainly because I wanted to save the shout outs for days 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I've got four more videos, well, 3 more after this one. 2 people going to get shout outs at the end of each one because I had 8 people that stepped up and helped donate. So first shout outs I want to give. First, I want to give a big shout out to Sarah Kennington. She's a game designer, designed Orsum recently, published by One Free Elephant. They currently have a game on Kickstarter that ends on this Friday, I believe, called Carcosa. It's a tile laying, kind of a take on Carcassonne almost, but it's set in like the H.P. Lovecraft universe. You're trying to summon the god in yellow and to be the first cult to successfully do so. So Sarah stepped up. Sarah's really cool. Definitely check her out. The Twitter handle is @OneFreeElephant. That's all one word. Check that out. Jump over to Kickstarter. Check out Carcosa and give them some love there if you've not already checked that out. Definitely like the folks at One Free Elephant. The second person I want to give a shout out to is my buddy Greg Landwehr. He's a friend of mine. I've been friends with Greg now for, close to 15 years now, I would think. We've worked together in a couple of different capacities, a couple of different jobs that we've had. And Greg does, in addition to his full-time job on the side, he does indie collectibles, where he does resells a lot of cards, trading cards, baseball, basketball, those kinds of things, as well as starting lineup figures, other toys, toys, accessories for those toys that he does on the side. He's got an eBay store that he sets up. He does some things on, he goes to different trade shows. He's run booths at trade shows and sold things that way. Check him out on Twitter at Indie Collectibles. Y'all put, obviously links to One Free Elephant Indie Collectibles. You'll see those links down in the description of this video. Definitely give them some love. They're super cool people. Subscribe if you haven't already to this channel. I've got 3 more Origins recap videos coming, as well as reviews for some of the games I talked about today with Sentient, Flip Ships, Flatline, Fox in the Forest, King Domino. We'll eventually have some more information coming out about Wits and Wagers Vegas. We'll probably try and squeeze in an interview with Bruce if I can pull him aside for that. May see a review for We Come in Peace. Who knows? But if you want to see those things, make sure you subscribe. Drop comments in the down below. We can get some discussion going. If you have questions for me, any questions about anything that I talked about, feel free to ask away. If I can answer it, I certainly will. If it's something that I'm not at liberty to talk about just yet, I'll say that as well, just to let you know. So look forward to talking to you in the next video, and until next time, I'm the Chubby Meeple. Keep gaming, friends.